What's up, guys? Emmanuel Jones here, and it's time to do our over/under win totals for our predictions. We're gonna get started here. So this is for the 2024 season. So let's get started here. So before I give you my projected win totals and my predictions for the 2024 season, don't forget to put a thumbs up to the video, subscribe to my channel for more options, and don't forget to comment down your opinion below who you have going over or under against your team. So we're gonna get started here. We're gonna go alphabetical order. So first we have is the Arizona Cardinals. Now the Cardinals, are projected at 6.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I just don't believe in the Cardinals defense enough to get them over 6 wins. I think the Cardinals are probably gonna win like 4 or 5 games or maybe six. Because I just don't believe in the defense, and especially Kyler Murray. He's too good of a quarterback to at least win them like 3 games. Because he's the future. But I like the additions of like Marvin Harrison Jr. paired up with Michael Wilson. I feel like Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like a good wide receiver. Paired up with Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, and Trey McBride had a good season. James Conner is still a stud. I mean, the offensive line is pretty good. The defense looks pretty young, but they made improvements throughout the draft by getting a first-round edge rusher and getting a corner in free agency. But I just don't believe in this defense enough to get them to where they're at. So I'm gonna go under here. Um, the Atlanta Falcons is next. They're projected at 9.5 wins. I'm probably gonna go under because I just don't believe in the defense. I just think the defense is still lousy. They don't have an edge rusher. Outside of Grady Jarrett, I mean Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata is fine, but I just think their defensive line is a bit lousy. The linebacking group outside of Caden Ellis is kind of suspect. The secondary is pretty strong, but they just lost a corner. So yeah. So, I mean, the offensive line is pretty strong, but I feel like Kirk Cousins is a good upgrade over Desmond Ritter. Darnell Mooney was a good move. Ray McLeod, I mean, they got some nice pieces. The Falcons got some nice additions here. I still think the Falcons, might deal with some learning curve with a new head coach and Raheem Morris. And I think the Falcons, I think they win about 8 or 9 games. I project maybe 9 or maybe 10. I'm not for sure because Kirk Cousins is a baller, but I feel like he's gonna be rusty coming off an injury. So I'm gonna go under here and say maybe 9 wins. All right, next team we got the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens are set up for 11.5 wins. Um, I agree with this number, but I'm going to go a little bit under this time because I think the Ravens are going to regress because you never know about Lamar's health, because I'm not sure about his health, and I'm not sure that if he's absolutely that great. I mean, he's still a good quarterback, but I'm just concerned about his health. I mean, all season he stayed all healthy long. But I think the Ravens' offensive line is totally regressed because they lost a few pieces. They lost a few pieces there. And I just kind of really feel like that, the Ravens receiving core is a little bit suspect outside Zay Flowers. I mean, Rashad Bateman is still there. I mean, they got some weapons, and Mark Andrews still excellent tight end. I mean, Derrick Henry was a really good move for them. The defense is still pretty good, but their defensive line is a bit suspect. The linebacking group is fine. The secondary is pretty strong by adding a first-round corner in Nate Wiggins. So the Ravens got good elements of their team, but I think they're gonna take a step back because Mike McDonald is not the defense coordinator of the Ravens anymore. He's with the Seattle Seahawks as the head coach. So yeah, I think the Ravens will probably at least win 11 games, but maybe 13 at best. But I say maybe 11, 12 games will be fine, or maybe about 10 wins. All right. Next team, we got the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are set for 10.5 wins. I'm going to go under here because I think the Bills might take a little bit of a step back this year because, they traded Stephon Diggs away. They lost Gabe Davis free agency. Now, Josh Allen, they added some new receivers to replace those guys. They added Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, Chase Claypool, and even they drafted a wide receiver in the second round, Keon Coleman, which I don't know if he's going to be the answer for the number one guy. But I think if he can step up his role, because I think he could be a really good wide receiver with this team if he steps up with his role. The offensive line is fine, but the defense is a little bit lousy. I think it's still the same, but they lost some pieces due to cap space, like Jordan Poyer and Travis White. So yeah, I think the Bills, are gonna at least win at least like 10 games this year. I say maybe like 13 at best, but maybe 9 at worst. But I think they win at least like 10, 11, or 12 games this year. I still think the Bills are still a good team, and their roster is pretty good. So I put the Bills. So I say I go under here. All right, next we got the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are set for 5.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I still think Bryce Young is still not good quarterback. Like Bryce Young, he's a bit small. And we know he sucked like last year. And I just think the Panthers, with the weapons that they have on offense, I think will improve their receiving core to go along with Adam Thielen. I mean, Xavier legit was a really good pickup, and Deontay Johnson was a good pickup from the trade. I mean, they got some weapons here, especially Tommy Tremble is a stud at tight end. So the Panthers added tight end and a running back. I mean, the Panthers got a lot of weapons on offense, and I feel they can make them more explosive. The offensive line did improve a little bit, and the defense did improve a little bit, but I still think the defense is okay, but I don't think it's good on paper. But they're going to have to deal with some learning curve with a new head coach and Dave Canales. So, yeah, I think the Panthers at least win about I say they win about 4 games this year. I think they're going to win at least 4 or 5 games because unless Bryce Young proves me wrong, I mean, maybe I'll say they can be better, but I feel like he's going to improve. But maybe I'm wrong about this, but yeah, I'm going to go under. Chicago Bears is next. The Bears are set for 8.5 wins. I'm going to go a little over here because I just think the Bears, are just I think they're a better team than last year. Like the Bears, defense played really good at the end of the year, and they did make improvements. I mean, they brought back Jalen Johnson. They signed Kevin Byard and all that. I mean, the Bears. I mean, they kind of had a really good offseason. The offensive line is pretty good. I mean, the receiving core did improve by adding Keenan Allen to go along with DJ Moore, and especially adding Rome Odunze. And they also added DeAndre Swift. So the Bears made a lot of moves this offseason, especially Caleb Williams. I feel like he could be a stud at quarterback, but I don't know how good Caleb Williams is going to be. So I think the Bears, and the coaching I just have questions about. So I think the Bears, are probably going to win 9 games this year. So I think the Bears, are slightly a better team than last year. I would project 9 to 10 wins this year. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Well, maybe we'll see about this. Next team, we have the Bengals. The Bengals are set for are projected at 10.5 wins. I'm going to go over here because I believe as long as Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I think this team can make the playoffs. And, this team last year didn't make the playoffs because Joe Burrow was hurt. I think the offensive line did improve a little bit. The receiving core is still the same, even though they lost Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon. I mean, they lost Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon, but it's still the same. And they added Zach Moss to replace. The defense is still pretty darn good. And Big Lou is still a really good defensive coordinator. They got a good coaching staff still. So, yeah. I project the Bengals over because I think Cincinnati has a chance to be a Super Bowl contender. All right. Next team, you got the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are set for at 8.5 wins. I'm going to go over because I just think the Browns, are just solidly the most talented football team ever. I mean, Deshaun Watson, he's not as good as he used to be, but the offensive line is pretty strong. The receiving core did improve by adding Jerry Jeudy to the mix. The defense is really good on paper, especially with Jim Schwartz. He's the best. He's a good defensive coordinator. They added Jim Schwartz. I mean, they added Jordan Hicks to the mix. I mean, their defense is totally really good. I mean, the secondary is awesome. It's really good. I mean, you still got Kevin Stefanski still calling plays. So yeah, I think the Browns are just a better team than last year. I'm gonna go over here. I say they win at least like 10 or 11 games because this team definitely made the playoffs last year. So yeah, I'm going over here. Next team, we got the Dallas Cowboys. I got the Cowboys. The Cowboys are set at 10.5 wins. I'm gonna go a little under because because I just think the Cowboys, they might win. When a lot of people are going to be picking the Eagles because Cowboys, they're probably going to take a little bit of step back this year because they lost a few pieces on defensive line like Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong. They lost one piece on the offensive line, Tyron Smith. The receiving core is still fine. I mean, even after losing Michael Gallup, I think Jalen Tolbert can really have a good season and be a good number 3. The running game, I mean, they brought back Zeke Elliott, which is nice, but their running game may not be the same. Dak, he's still a good quarterback. The coaching is still fine. I mean, they just lost Dan Quinn. They replaced Mike Zimmer. I don't even know how Mike Zimmer is gonna. I don't even know what the defense will look like with Mike Zimmer, but I think the secondary is still amazing. So the Cowboys have definitely been going a lot through this season. So I think the Cowboys, are gonna win at least like 10 games this year. Because due to the fact that Dallas might have a tough schedule this year, because they gotta play the AFC, they gotta play the best division in the NFL, which is the AFC North. They have to play like one NFC North team. They have to play they have to play like all the teams in the NFC West, which is gonna be really good. So that's gonna be challenging. So I think Dallas wins like 10 games this year because they might have a tougher schedule than last year. The next team got the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are set for at 5.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Broncos, I'm not sold on the quarterback position, and I don't know how good Bo Nix is going to be. Like Bo Nix, maybe he has some good moments, but I don't know. And Zach Wilson, we know he sucks. But the offensive line, I don't think it's good. They still got Javonte Williams, who's a good running back. The receiving core outside of Cortland Sutton isn't good, even though that Troy Franklin was a really good pickup from the draft. He can be a really good number 2 wide receiver. The defense, I mean, it's still pretty fine, but they played really good at the end of the year. But I don't think the defense, is as great because they lost some pieces like Justin Simmons and Bradley Chubb. I mean, this defense is totally not as good as last year or years ago. So yeah, they still got Sean Payton as a good coach. I don't know how he's going to develop a young quarterback. So I think the Broncos, are going to win at least like 2 to 3 games this year. So yeah, I project it as one of the worst teams in the NFL coming up, and I think they could look to draft a quarterback in the future. All right, next team, we got the Detroit Lions. The Lions are set for at 10.5 wins. I'm going over because I think the Lions had a really good offseason. I like the improvements that they did. I mean, they added Carlton Davis through the trade. They added Arnold in the first round. I mean, the Lions did a lot this offseason. I think they did upgrade their corner position, and their defensive line is still pretty good. The linebacking group is fine. The offensive line is still darn good. The receiving core is pretty good. So the Lions, I mean, they're pretty much a good team. I think they have a good. I think this team can definitely win the Super Bowl this year, and I feel like Jared Goff has the ability to at least win himself a Super Bowl. Especially Dan Campbell, still a good coach. The coaching staff is still there. It's still the same. I mean, they got So yeah, so I believe the Lions are gonna at least win like 11 or 12 games, or maybe 13. Next team we have is the Packers. I have the Packers as 9.5 wins. They're projected at 9.5 wins, but I'm gonna go over here. I think the Packers are slightly going to be a contender next year. I just like them with the move. I just like the Packers offseason. I think they had a good offseason. Adding Josh Jacobs to the mix after losing Aaron Jones, and then adding Xavier McKinney through free agency to replace Darnell Savage. I mean, they did a lot this offseason to improve. I mean, Buller was a good pickup. I mean, that defense still the same, and the offensive line and it's pretty darn good. The receiving core is pretty okay, and it's pretty young. I mean, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Devontae Wicks. I mean, those are really good wide receivers. They could look to be studs. The tight ends are fine. I mean, this young team definitely made the playoffs last year, and I think they're slightly to be a contender because I think Jordan Love is going to be elite, though. So, yeah, I think the Packers are going to at least win like 10 or 11 games this year. All right, next team we have the Houston Texans. The Texans are slight. The Texans are projected as 9.5 wins. I'm gonna go over here because I think the Texans are gonna be a better team than they were last year. I think they win at least 11, 12, or 13 games because I think C.J. Stroud, he's a baller. He's gonna be elite. They added a really good. They made some really good moves. They added Stephon Diggs. They added Joe Mixon, and they also added Danielle Hunter to the defense. I believe the offense will be more explosive. The offensive line is still good. I mean, they still kept Bobby Slow as the offensive coordinator. I mean, they still got a really good young coach in D'Amico Ryan, so a really good coach who works with the defense. I think the defense is going to be better than last year. It's going to after adding Hunter, and the secondary is pretty strong. So yeah, I believe the Texans, are going to be a contender next year. I think this team can definitely win the Super Bowl, but I would not be surprised if they did. So I say the Texans at least win 12 games this year. That's what I project the Texans to win. The Colts are slightly projected as 8.5 wins. I'm gonna go a little under here because I think the Colts are totally getting overhyped now because I'm not sure how good Anthony Richardson's going to be because Anthony Richardson, he only played in 5 games this year because he was out rest of the season due to an injury, and I feel like he's gonna be rusty coming off it because he's coming off an injury, and I just think the Colts, they got some good elements of their team. I mean, they also added Donnie Mitchell through the draft, which I like to go along with Michael Pittman. So I feel like the receiving core did improve a little bit. Josh Downs is still there. Pierce is still there. They can improve at tight end. Jonathan Taylor's still a stud. Offensive line is pretty strong. The defense is good, but I think their defensive line is pretty strong. Linebacking group is a little bit suspect. The secondary is a little bit suspect as well. I mean, the corners, Juju Brents is a good corner, but I don't know. But Kenny Moore is a good corner. The secondary just is a little bit suspect. So I predict the Colts to at least win at least like 7 or 8 wins. 9, I wouldn't be shocked about this, but maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. I'm just gonna go since the Colts are getting a little bit overhyped, I'm just gonna go under. The Jacksonville Jaguars is next. The Jaguars are projected at 8.5 wins. I'm gonna go over because I think Jacksonville is gonna be better than they were last year. They lost Calvin Ridley and they replaced him with Brian Thomas through the draft. They also added Gabe Davis in free agency to go along with Christian Kirk. So the receiving core is pretty strong. The offensive line is still a little suspect. The defense is totally improved by adding Eric Armstead. Linebacking group is fine. Secondary is all right, but they can add another corner. So, they added Darnell Savage in there, so yeah. So the Jags defense, the Jags got some good elements of their roster. They still got Doug Peterson as the head coach who's gonna make the team a lot more competitive. So I think the Jags, are gonna at least win about 9 or 10 games. But I wouldn't be shocked if they won the division. But I think 9 or 10 games is what this team where I projected them to win. So yeah, so I'm going over here. The Kansas City Chiefs is next. The Chiefs are slightly projected as 11.5 wins. I'm gonna go over here because I think the Chiefs are gonna continue to be the best team in the league still. I got them. I say they're gonna win about 12 or 13 games because I think the Chiefs, got the best defense in the league, and plus, they lost L'Jarius Sneed, and all of a sudden, the defense is still pretty good. The offensive line is really strong. The receiving core did improve. They revamped it by adding Hollywood Brown And they also added Xavier Worthy through the draft to go along with Rashee Rice. I don't know what's going on with Rashee Rice. I don't know if he's going to play, but he's projected to be suspended for a couple of games. They still got Travis Kelce there. They also drafted a tight end as well. The running game is still pretty good. They still got Andy Reid as the best coach and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. The coaching staff is still there. So, yeah. So, I project the Chiefs, if they go on a three-peat, that would be really awesome. So, I project them 12 to 13 wins is what I project them to do. Next team, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are projected at 6.5 wins. I am going to go over here because I think the Raiders are slightly going to be a better team than they were last year. The Raiders, have definitely. I think the Raiders are totally better than last year because I like the improvements of their roster. They added Christian Wilkins to go along with Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson and Malcolm Coons. So I think their run defense is going to be really good with their front seven. Linebacking group is outside of Robert Spillane is kind of suspect. The secondary is young, but I think they can improve it a little bit. But the offensive line is still pretty good. The receiving core is really strong with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Michael Mayer. And also they added Brock Bowers too. And they also added Jalen Guyton in free agency. So the receiving core is really good. The running game, I don't think is going to be the same without Josh Jacobs. I'm not sure about the quarterback position. I don't know if Aiden O'Connell is going to start or it's going to be Gardner Minshew. I just have questions about the quarterback position. But I think one of these quarterbacks is going to start, and I think Gardner Minshew might start because he's probably gained more confidence in Aiden O'Connell. And especially they have a really good, respectable coach, Antonio Pierce, which I don't really know if he's going to be the next Dan Campbell, which we don't know. I think the Raiders are probably going to win at least like 7 or 8 games this year. I say they're going to at least win like 7 or 8 games because last year they won like 8 games and they nearly made the playoffs. I think the Raiders are projected to be a wild card. So, I think they're projected to at least win at least like 8 games this year. Maybe 9 at best, but I think 8 is projected. I think maybe 7 or 8 wins is what I'm predicting that they're gonna win. So I think the Raiders are pretty much underrated. So yeah, I'm gonna go over here. Los Angeles Chargers is next. The Chargers are projected at 8.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Chargers are probably gonna be a lot worse. Again, I still think they're gonna be bad again because first of all, the Chargers, have lost 3 of their best players on offense. They lost Mike Williams in free agency, which they moved on from him. They lost Austin Ekeler in free agency. They traded Keenan Allen away. And, they still got Quentin Johnson. They also drafted Ladd McConkey and Rice. And they also they added 2 running backs in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. So the Chargers offense might not be the same. It's probably going to look different. And I feel like Justin Herbert, he's going to have to adjust with the new weapons that they have on offense, which he's still a good quarterback. But, yeah, and they got Jim Harbaugh as well. But I don't really know. I don't really know if Jim Harbaugh is gonna. I feel like he can change this culture, but I feel like he's an upgrade over Brandon Stanley. But I think the offensive line is pretty strong. The defense, I mean, it's still pretty good. Their pass rush is pretty good, but it's getting older. The secondary is okay, but I think the Chargers, are probably gonna win at least like 6, 7, or 8 games this year. I think they're gonna win at least like 7 or 8 games this year, looking outside of playoffs. I think next year is a year I think the Chargers will be back in the playoffs. So I'm going to go under here. Next team, we have the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams is slightly projected at 8.5 wins. I'm going to go over here because I think the Rams are going to be a better team than they were last year. I think their offense is still the same. Puka Nacua had a breakout season, and Cooper Kupp did. I think the offense will be very explosive. I think the offensive line is starting to improve. The defense is totally pretty strong. I mean, it may not be the same because they lost Aaron Donald, but they replaced him with Jared Verse in the first round. Kobe Turner's still there. Bobby Brown's still there. I mean, the defense is pretty young. I mean, the secondary did improve by adding Cameron Curl, Darius Williams, and Tre'Davious White. So I feel their secondary, they did upgrade their secondary. But I think the run defense might not be as good as last year, but I think the secondary will be okay. And he still got Sean McVay still calling plays, but the defense might take a little bit of a step back due to Raheem Morris leaving. So I think the Rams are probably going to at least win at least around like 10 or 11 games this year. So, yeah, I go over here. And especially Matthew Stafford is still a good quarterback, but I'm just concerned about his health. But I feel like if he can stay healthy, I think he can take this team to the playoffs. So, yeah, I say the Rams. So I go over here. The Miami Dolphins is next. The Dolphins are set for projected at 9.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Dolphins might regress this year because they lost a lot of pieces on defense like Jerome Baker and Xavier Howard and Christian Wilkins, but they still got some talent though. But I think they also place Howard with Kendall Fuller, and they also added Jordan Brooks in free agency, and they also added Anthony Walker. So the defense is still okay, but I feel like it may not be as good as it was last year because Vic Fangio left and they got a new defensive coordinator. I mean, the offensive line is still pretty good. The receiving core is pretty good. They also had an OBJ. And I think, I feel like as long as Tua can stay healthy, I think the Dolphins can be a dangerous team in the AFC. But I've had questions about his health and the coaching. I have questions about their roster. And especially they got a difficult schedule because they got a difficult schedule this year. So I think the Dolphins, I think they're gonna at least win like 8 or 9 games this year. I mean, maybe they win 10 at best or 11, but I don't know. So yeah, I think the Dolphins are probably gonna win at least like 8 or 9 games this year because I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, this year unless they prove me. I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so yeah. So I think the Dolphins are gonna at least like win like 9 games this year. So yeah, the Minnesota Vikings is next. The Vikings are projected at 6.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Vikings, I have questions about the quarterback position. Like, who's gonna be the quarterback? Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy? I think the offense did improve by adding Aaron Jones. The offensive line is still pretty strong. The defenses did improve by adding they added Jonathan Greener, they added Andrew Van Ginkel. They lost Daniel Hunter, but the defense did improve a little bit. The secondary is still the same, but it's a little suspect. It's getting old, and they still got Brian Flores coaching the defense, Kevin O'Connell calling the offense. So yeah, I think the Vikings are probably gonna be bad once again. I say they're probably gonna be in the back in the playoffs, maybe like next year. So yeah, I think the Vikings, are probably gonna win at least like 5 games this year. So yeah, I'm gonna go under. All right, next team you have the New England Patriots. The Patriots are projected to 5.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think I have questions about Drake May. I think Drake May will be awesome. I've still got questions about the offensive line. I still think the offensive line is suspect. The receiving core, I don't think it. I feel like it did improve a little bit, but I don't know they have a number one. The running game will be fine. The defense is still the same. I mean, they're gonna bring back Chris Gonzalez from injury reserve, and so is Matt Judon. I feel like Gerard Mayo can definitely make the Patrons a lot better. So I still think the defense is still pretty good. The offense, I don't think is as good as it was. I think Drake May can be an upgrade over Mac Jones. So yeah. So I think the Patrons are gonna at least win at least like 5 games this year, maybe 4 to 5 games this year. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think that's why I project the Patriots to win. And I think so. Yeah, I'm gonna go under here. The Saints are next. The Saints are projected at 7.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I just have questions about Derek Carr. I just think the offensive line is a bit suspect, even though they got a first round tackle. Derek Carr, I still think he's not as good as he was. I feel like he's regressed. I think the team and some of their players are getting older though, but the offense is pretty good. They got some good weapons. The offensive line is the defense is getting older, but they did improve by adding Chase Young and Willie Gay. The secondary did improve in the draft by adding Kool-Aid McKinstry to go along with Marshawn Lattimore. So their secondary is going to be really strong. I still think the Saints defense is still pretty darn good, but I just got questions about the coaching. So I just think the Saints are probably going to at least win at least like 6 or 7 games this year. I know that's bold, but I think the Saints are gonna suck again this year. I mean, they went 9-8 last year, but I think they're gonna I think they're gonna take a step back this year a little bit. So I got them going under here. The Giants is next. I got the Giants slightly. The Giants, they're projected at 6.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Giants, I think their schedule is going to be a lot tougher than last year. Daniel Jones is a question. I have questions about his health. And the quarterback position is a bit concerning, though, because people are saying the Giants could look to draft a quarterback because Daniel Jones may not be there any longer. But, they lost some pieces, like Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley. The secondary is pretty young. The defense is pretty young, but they definitely improved their defensive line a little bit by adding Brian Burns to go along with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. The offensive line is still a little suspect, but the receiving core, I mean, they added Malik Neighbors as the number one receiver. I think he could be a really good receiver with this team. I think the Giants got plenty of weapons on offense to work with. I'm not sure about Darren Waller. I don't know if he's coming back, but the running game may not be the same after losing Barkley, but they added Devin Singletary to replace him. And they still got a good coaching staff, but they lost Wink Martindale, so I think the defense might take a little bit of a step back this year. But I think the Giants are probably going to slightly win at least like 3 to 4 games this year. So yeah, I got the Giants going under. The New York Jets is next. The Jets are slightly projected as 9.5 wins. I'm gonna go over here because I think if long as Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, I think the Jets can definitely be a contender in the AFC. And especially they had a really good offseason. They traded for Hassan Reddick. They also added Mike Williams to go along with Garrett Wilson because Alan Lazard wasn't able to step up his role as number two. They also added a receiver in the mid rounds. The offensive line did improve by adding Tyron Smith. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of Hackett, but yeah, but I felt the Jets did have a good offseason. I felt the Jets are probably gonna at least win like 10 or 11 games this year. Maybe 12 at best. Maybe 12 or 13 at best. But I think 11 wins what I projected. So I'm gonna go over here. The Philadelphia Eagles is next. The Eagles are slightly projected as 10.5 wins. I'm going to go over because I think the Eagles might have a chance. I think the Eagles are probably going to win the division because I think the Eagles, did made a lot of improvements. They added Saquon Barkley. They also added Becton in free agency and Bryce Huff, and they brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The Eagles made so much improvements, and they also added Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. So I think the Eagles' defense will be better because, they added 2 corners in the draft by adding Cooper DeJean and Quinton Mitchell to go along with Slay. Because those can be their starting corners for the future if Slay decides to retire. So I think the Eagles are going to be a better team than they were last year. I think the Eagles are probably going to win at least 11 or 12 games this year. So yeah. And Jalen Hurts could be the question though because he's still a good quarterback, but yeah, the coaching is still fine. So yeah, I think the Eagles are probably going to win at least 11 or 12 games this year, and I think they'd be the winner of the NFC East. Next team we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are slightly projected at 7.5 wins. I'm gonna go over here because I think the Steelers are just I do not agree with this number because I think the Steelers are better than 7 wins because Mike Tomlin always avoids a losing season and he's a really good coach. So yeah, I think the Steelers win at least like 9 to 10 games this year because they upgraded at quarterback, adding Russell Wilson by getting rid of Kenny Pickett. The offensive line did improve, the running game did improve, but they traded Deontay Johnson away and they also replaced him with the receiver in the second or third round, going on with George Pickens. The defense is still good, but their defensive line is strong. They added Patrick Queen to miss, added Peyton Wilson. The secondary is still the same. So yeah, I think the Steelers are just. I think the Steelers, I feel like Arthur Smith was a really good upgrade over Matt Canada. I think he can make the Steelers more competitive on offense. So I think the Steelers, are definitely going to at least win like 9 to 10 games this year. But I would not be. But they could definitely make that jump in the playoff territory. But I wouldn't be shocked if they did it again. So I'm going to go over here. San Francisco 49ers next. The 49ers are slightly projected at 11.5 wins. I'm going to go over here because I think the Niners are kind of better than they were. They're better than 11 wins. Like, this team, definitely got the first seed last year. And they're still slightly the best team in the league. I mean, the offense is still the same. I mean, the receiving core is still the same. The offensive line is still the same. The defense, have lost some pieces, but they added DeAndre Campbell in free agency. So the linebacking group is really good. The pass rush, defensive line is pretty strong, even though they lost Furrow and Chase Young and Kinlaw. And then the secondary is still the same as well. So, yeah. But Brandon Stanley, they added him to the mix because, they got rid of Steve Wilkes and all that. So, yeah. And they still got Brock Purdy, who's a really good quarterback. The coaching is still good as well. So, yeah. So, I think the Niners are definitely the best team in the NFC. So they're probably going to at least win at least like 13 to 14 games this year. So, yeah, I'm going to go over here. Seattle is so slightly projected at 7.5 wins. I'm going to go over here because I do not agree with this number. I think they're better than 7 wins because last year they won 9 games this year and they missed out on the playoffs. I think the Seahawks, definitely have a good chance to be a playoff team this year. They still got Geno Smith. He's a really good, talented quarterback. Their receiving core is really good. Their running game is really good. The offensive line did improve a little bit. The defense is still the same. So, yeah, they're going with some changes because they have a new head coach in Mike McDonald, which I think he'd do a really good job with the defense. So yeah, I think the Seahawks are definitely better than 7 wins. So I think they're gonna at least win at least like 9 to 10 games this year. So yeah, I'm gonna go over here. Next team we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are slightly projected at 7.5 wins. I'm gonna go over here because I think the Bucs, they were a better team because basically they won 9 games and they made the playoffs last year. The Bucs still have some talent around. The receiving core is still the same. They still got Baker Mayfield. They brought him back. The offensive line is still pretty good. The coaching staff is pretty good, especially with Todd Bowles. He's a really good defensive coach. And the defense is, might take a step back because they lost some pieces like Devin White and all that, and Carlton Davis in the secondary is still pretty strong as well. So yeah, I think the Bucs are probably gonna win at least like 8 games this year because I think the Bucs got a tougher schedule than last year. Because I think the Bucs got a tougher schedule. So yeah, I'm gonna go over here and probably say they win like 8 or 9 games. The Tennessee Titans are next. The Tennessee Titans are projected at 6.5 wins. I'm gonna go like I'm gonna go over here because I think the Titans are probably gonna win like 6 or 7 games because they made a lot of improvements because they revamped their receiving core by adding Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd to go along with DeAndre Hopkins because Traylon Burks wasn't able to step up his role. They lost Derrick Henry, but they replaced him with Tony Pollard. The offensive line did improve a little bit. The defense is still pretty good, but the secondary did improve by adding L'Jarius Sneed and Chiwetel Ejiofor. So I think the Titans' defense secondary is going to be stronger now. So yeah, I think the Titans, are definitely are going to be a better team than they were last year. So I think they're probably going to win like 7 or 8 games this year. But 9, I would not be surprised. So I think the AFC South can definitely be pretty good, but I would not be surprised at all. So yeah, I got the Titans over here. And last team we have is the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are set for projected at 6.5 wins. I'm gonna go under here because I think the Commanders are totally a little bit overhyped. I think their schedule is gonna be a lot tougher than they were. Tougher because I think they're gonna win at least like 4 games because I'm not sure what Jaden Daniels is gonna look like. I think Jaden Daniels could be a really good quarterback. I mean, I like the skill group. They added Austin Eckler in free agency. Um, the receiving core is still the same. The offensive line is still a little suspect. The defensive line is still the same, even though they lost Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I mean, they still got Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and they also added Dorrance Armstrong to go along with them. And the linebacking group did improve by adding Frankie Lou and Bobby Wagner. The secondary is still fine because they did improve the secondary a little bit, but the corner group they added Michael Davis, but yeah, I mean Dan Quinn. I mean he can definitely make them better though. But yeah, they lost their offensive coordinator as well and their defensive coordinator. So I don't know how's that gonna work. So yeah, I think the Washington Commanders are probably gonna win at least like 4 or 5 games this year. So yeah, I slightly gonna go under. Well, all right, guys, those are all my win. Well, all right, guys, those those are all my win. Those are all my win projected totals for the NFL 2024 season. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. And if you disagree with me, just let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. Or how many games you think your team will win when going over or under. Well, this is Emmanuel Jones from Big Fan. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later. Peace.